how does that, I'm curious, how does that stand up today for women? If you go back 100 years, it was the chaste woman, and so to be a sexual person was an enormous thing, and they were always separated. And then sort of in the 60s, 70s, there was an an opening where tenderness and sensuality and sexuality could be one, and then it seems they're separated again, and the whole hooking up kind of syndrome, where there's sexuality without emotion. So it's sort of the opposite. There was emotion without sexuality 100 years ago, and now it's kind of common with a sexuality without emotion. But this is so emotional as she's going to be with this man. And
100 years ago.
Did anybody read the book? Book what?
Well, I think, for all the magnificent, intellectual understanding, to me at that moment, it's the heart was just responding. And
well, if you see Joyce's Bloom, it's an extraordinary testament to love and to his wife's persona, the Bloom's wife, Molly. And I often felt he was really probably talking about his own wife.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. It was about 20 years ago, a woman named Brenda Maddox wrote a biography of Nora Joyce, and it was called Nora Joyce, The Real Life of Molly Bloom. And, it's been a long time since I read that. But in many ways, Nora really was Molly Bloom, and I think that was Brenda Maddox's thesis for her book, was that she was Molly Bloom.
Yeah. And wasn't Joyce in certain ways like Leopold Bloom in terms of not being sexually really involved with his wife? Some of the articles we were reading leading up to today were saying that. Did you tell me?
Yeah. There's some books over there that are essays, books full of essays that are criticisms, not criticisms, critical essays on this story and novel, and one of them was saying.
I guess he was in the beginning, though.
Yeah, I had such a different impression from letters that he wrote to her that were just so profoundly sexual and sensual that I thought, the way he loved her couldn't have been an intellectual bond. He was really physically passionate about her, at least at first. But then I can imagine the life that they led being so fraught with stress and strain, no money, the children are sick, and so that might have distanced them.
And also,
infidelities happen in marriages. It's extraordinary when a marriage survives that, and when the people find their way back to being in love with each other, and that's what I think happens in this book.
Yes, definitely.
They're so estranged and they're so alone in themselves, and at the end there's really nothing in their consciousness except each other.
Having just a feeling, I don't know, this just came to me, but the affirmation of love and sexuality in that, I think if you went back 100 years, women who had a love life basically had to die. And in the 30s, 40s, 50s, if you were gay and had a love life, you had to die, And so here's Joyce 100 years ago, really just affirming the fullness of love, in the emotions, the physical, and the sexual, which is another very unusual thing, I think, about this novel.
Certainly at the time.
Earlier we were talking all about the theme of love that goes through the novel, and I was noticing in the essays there wasn't much focus on that. There was more focus on textual differences and classical allusions and things.
And the symbolic nature of things.
Yeah. I don't remember much from her biography, but I remember that they didn't know each other long when they left Ireland. It was like maybe a month or so. It was just a very quick courtship, and she left with him. And that was rather an amazing thing for the time.
She went away with him? Like,
Yeah,
that's where
they went to the continent.
They
Oh,
went.
was he on his way anyway? Or?
He was.
He had
Yeah.
left the church and left Ireland and all his prejudices.
All his prejudices.
Right, but he took it all with him.
But they would have
But he
had to
lived in the
leave
continent.
because
Pardon me?
they would have had to leave for lots of reasons, right? If they wanted to stay together. The class difference was huge between her and him. And she was also, you know, due to her job, she was a part-time hooker, which is what people did when they worked in hotels in those days in Dublin.
And a
So
singer.
that's, I'm pretty sure, how they met. And
She was a part-time.
I didn't know
Also
that.
know that.
Oh,
I did
thought
not
she
know
was a
that.
singer.
no, she wasn't a singer. She was at the
You tried to
Chambermaid,
call it
no,
what?
sorry.
Yeah, I thought she was a
His real
chambermaid, but I didn't
Oh, yes,
know.
She
real
was a
life.
chambermaid too.
chambermaids were, they typically had to supplement their income by
Uh-huh.
being streetwalkers from there
I see.
occasionally, and
And that
what
was
poor
Nora.
people now do again. You know, it's not that different.
Yeah.
Wow.
I said, and you think so that's maybe how Joyce met her, is that what you would think?
I think there's a lot of evidence that that's how he met her, yes. But it doesn't really matter.
No.
What matters is that they formed a great partnership. and
Yeah.
they-
And even though there was all of this separation and they seemed to be coming together at the end of the
Yes,
book,
yeah.
and the love prevailed.
I liked what her father said when he heard her name. It was Barnacle, and he said, Barnacle, huh? She'll never leave him. You know?
And it was true.
But now, leaving the home country was another parallel to Ibsen, because very early in his career, right after Peer Gynt, Ibsen left Norway for good, disgusted with his country.
Yeah.
The people, I think part of it is that the people didn't want freedom from their overlords.
They did.
Yeah.
They were controlled by another country in those days, Denmark.
Denmark.
But then didn't he go to Denmark?
No, he went to Italy.
Yeah, he
He
went to
went to Italy.
There was, one of the things that Maddox writes about is that Barnacle is not derived from the little sea creature, but from the Barnacle Goose. And that her name has to do with the species of goose,
Yeah.
that's where it came from.
Let's see.